Hello and welcome to the Maths Matrix. My name's Rebecca and in this series of videos we're going to be doing ratio. For today's video you'll need paper and a pen and you'll need to know how to divide without a calculator. I'm going to pop some questions on screen shortly, and if you know that you would know how to do those questions, then you don't have to watch this video, you can just move on to part 2. If you are going to skip on to the next video, I'd be really grateful if you could leave me a like before you go. Here are the questions now. Okay. If you're still with me, then I'm assuming you didn't know how to do all those questions, so let's get started. If you put a title of ratio, and then underneath that put the most important thing to remember about ratio is that it is to do with parts. And then after that, put on a new line, if there are 2 boys and 3 girls in a group, the ratio of boys to girls is 2 to 3. The order does matter. We must put 2 to 3. And not 3 to 2. It is the ratio of girls to boys. That is 3 to 2. So if boys and girls are in the ratio 2 to 3, that means there's 2 boys for every 3 girls, which is different to if there were 3 girls for every 2 boys. So it's important on exams that you do pay attention to the order in ratio questions. Following on from that, just put, sometimes in an exam, you are given a ratio and are asked what fraction of the group is a certain thing, or what percentage of the group is a certain thing. E.g., the ratio of boys to girls is 2 to 3. What fraction of the group are boys? What percentage of the group are girls? Now, the mistake that people make in those questions, if boys and girls are in the ratio 2 to 3 and they're asked what fraction are boys, people say, oh, well, it must be 2/3, and that's not correct. Because if we remember that ratio is all about parts, then a ratio of 2 to 3 means that 2 parts of a group are boys and 3 parts of a group are girls. So altogether, in a ratio of 2 to 3, we've got 5 parts. And if there's 5 parts in the group and 2 of them are boys, then that means that 2/5 of the group are boys. So 2/5, not 2/3. So if you're asked what fraction of a group, you first of all have to think, well, how many parts have I got all together? And how many of those parts are the thing that they're specifically asking about? So the fraction of boys would be 2/5. That would mean that the fraction of girls would be 3/5. So if they asked what percentage were girls, percent literally means for every 100 or out of 100. So if 3 out of 5 are girls, then we can scale that fraction up to something out of 100 by timesing the bottom by 20. And because we're timesing the bottom by 20, to keep the fraction representing the same portion, we've got to times the top by 20 as well. So 3/5 girls would scale up to be 60 out of 100 girls, which is 60% of the group would be girls. So if on a non-calculator paper they ask you what percent, then you would come through a fraction, scale it up to something out of 100, and then convert it to a percentage. So if we do another one, if you just put e.g. cordial and water must be mixed so that there is 1 part cordial for every 4 parts of water. Write down the ratio of cordial and water. What fraction of the mixture is cordial? What percentage of the mixture is water? If you actually want to have a go at that before I do it, then hit pause and have a go, and then I'll go through it. And if you don't think that you could do it yet, then that doesn't matter. Just wait and I'll go through it in a second, okay? All right, so the question specifically said cordial first and then water. And it said that it was 1 part cordial and 4 parts water. So cordial to water is in the ratio 1:4. Altogether, that means that we've got 5 parts because we've got 1 part cordial and another 4 parts water, which means that 1 out of 5 parts are cordial. So 1/5 of the mixture is cordial. If there's 1/5 cordial and the other 4 parts are water, that means that 4/5 of the mixture is water. We can times 5 by 20 to get to 100. So we'll times the 4 by 20 as well to give 80 out of 100. So 80 out of 100 parts are water, which means that 80% of the overall mixture will be water. Okay. If you continue on with your notes now, start a new line of writing and put ratios behave a lot like sideways fractions. Just like fractions, they can be cancelled down. A ratio is said to be in its simplest form when it cannot be cancelled down any further. And then put e.g. in a garden there are 20 bluebell plants and 45 daffodil plants. Write down the ratio of bluebells to daffodils, giving your answer in its simplest form. So what we would do there, bluebells were mentioned first and daffodils were mentioned second. There were 20 bluebell plants and there were 45 daffodil plants. And then we can cancel a ratio down just like a fraction on its side. So if we had the fraction 20 over 45 and we were going to cancel that down, we could divide the top by 5 and the bottom by 5. We're going to do the same to cancel down a ratio, except instead of a top and a bottom, we've got a left and a right. So I'm going to divide each of those numbers by 5 to give me 4 to 9. And then there's nothing else that 4 and 9 divide by. So that is the answer in its simplest form. It's exactly like cancelling a fraction down, except sideways. All right? Unlike with fractions though, you can get ratios with 3 or more parts. So if we had, if in an animal rescue centre, we had 15 cats and we had 27 dogs and we had 12 rabbits, and we were asked to express the ratio of cats, dogs and rabbits in its simplest form, then we'd put cats to dogs to rabbits. We'd put 15 under the cats, 27 under the dogs and 12 under the rabbits. And then each of those will divide by 3. So we'd now divide by 3 and we'd divide that bit by 3 as well, and we'd divide that bit by 3 as well to give us 5 to 9 to 4 as our overall answer. It's important to mention that before you can cancel a ratio down, the left and right sides have to be in the same units. So sometimes they'll give you one where the units are mixed and ask you to cancel that down. Continuing on with your notes, if you just put, before a ratio can be cancelled down, all parts must be in the same units. And then just put, e.g., express the ratio £60p to £5 in its simplest form. Now here we've got a left hand side that's in pence and we've got a right hand side that's in pounds, and that won't do because we're not comparing like with like. So before we can start simplifying this ratio down, we have to make sure that either both sides are in pence or both sides are in pounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this side in pence and I'm going to change that into pence as well. You could do it so that both sides were in pounds, but we'd end up with a decimal there, so it's just easier in this case if I make the £5 into pence instead. And because there's 100 pennies in a pound, that means in £5 there's 500 pennies. Now I can simplify that, so I can divide both bits by 10 because they've both got a 0 on the end. So that'd give me 6 to 50. And then because each of those is even, I can divide each of them by 2 as well to give me a final answer of 3 to 25. Okay, we'll do one more like that. So if you put e.g. in a recipe, 200 grams of butter is to be mixed with a kilogram of flour. What is the ratio of butter to flour? Give your answer in its simplest terms. If you want to have a go at that, hit pause, and then when you've done it, hit play and I'll go through it. If you're not sure you'd know how to do it, then just keep the video running because I will go through it in a second, okay? So here we had butter to flour was in the ratio 200 grams to 1 kilogram. But that's not comparing like with like. So we have 200 grams to 1,000 grams if we're putting them in the same units because there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram. Then each of those will divide by 100 because they've each got 2 noughts on the end. So that'd give me a ratio of 2 to 10. And then each of those will further divide by 2 to give us a ratio of 1 to 5. So in other words, for every 1 part butter, there's another 5 parts flour. Okay? And that's how you cancel down ratio. So we've said that in ratio, the order does matter. We've said it's all to do with parts, how many parts you've got all together, so that you can answer questions like what fraction are bluebells, what percentage are daffodils. We've said you can cancel them down like sideways fractions, even if there's 3 parts. And we've said that before you can cancel them down, you have to be comparing like units. So you have to be in grams and pence and litres and litres. You can't be comparing one of one thing or one of another thing. All right, I'm going to put the questions from the beginning back on screen and hopefully now you'll be able to do them. Hit pause and have a go. When you've done them, hit play and there'll be a separate sheet with the solutions. Thank you very much for watching and join me in part 2 where we'll be doing scaling up ratios.